the late 80s, I was working for Activision as their head of development, and we were publishing all the Sierra games from the US, and they were incredibly successful. And I felt very passionately that while I loved their games, actually the idea of King Graham of Daventry doing the same old thing, taking himself much too seriously. But we were very much going against Monkey Island and the LucasArts games. As very genuine competition, and we got on very well with them. And when Simon Jeffrey, who went on to run LucasArts, he'd previously been at Virgin and was the marketing manager who marketed Broken Sword. So he'd gone from working with us to running LucasArts, and at that point we nearly got a very good relationship with LucasArts because he was very keen to try and push forward the adventure.
An innocent vacation in Paris unwittingly whisks young American George Stobbart away on a mysterious and compelling escapade which could change the fate of man. Broken Sword, the shadow of the Templars.
Broken Sword sold about 1 million copies. Broken Sword 2 sold about 1 million copies in the mid-90s. Then you're getting down to a few 100,000 at the most. Now it's going back up again. Developers like Revolution or many of the fantastic German developers, finding that they can actually sell and make a profit, which was very difficult 4 or 5 years ago. We wanted to write Broken Sword 1 on PlayStation, and we were working with Virgin Interactive at the time in Europe, and Virgin were wonderful, and they're still my friends. They were a wonderful publisher. They were just so inspired. But when they published the game on PC, and I said that we'd like to do a PlayStation version, and they said it won't work. Okay, but in that case I said we'd like to go to Sony. Go to Sony, it won't work. Sony were fantastically successful at driving a new audience, building a new audience, which was young people. They went to universities and colleges, and the uptake was very rapid because it was cool. But the problem was that the games that these people wanted were very visceral, fast. Football is a great example. People, Pro Evolution Soccer, everybody said that was the best. They were deeply loyal to it. And then FIFA overtook it. And now everybody's forgotten about Pro Evolution Soccer. Yeah. Because ultimately it's all about the soccer experience. It doesn't really matter who the brand is. Whereas if we can write a game that people really care about in terms of the story and the characters and the gameplay, then hopefully they'll have more of an emotional relationship with us than they would do with a relationship with a more visceral game type. Publishers really believed that the new audience wanted visceral 3D games, and that's why in many ways when we wrote Broken Sword 3 with THQ we were aiming it much more at a console market, because the wisdom from the publishers was that that was what the future was and that the PC was effectively dead. What happened is that the audience grew very rapidly, and what people didn't notice was that the traditional gamers, the people that had played adventures before from a much wider demographic, age range, both genders, were driven out. The old school adventure players really prefer the 2D point and click, and certainly that's the new audience, that's the audience that's really blossomed, and they're the ones that we will be aiming at for our new games.
You said something very different some years ago. Someone told me some years ago you were saying that the 2D era is over.
Sometimes one say what one used to be able to say in the olden days then got forgotten. Unfortunately, everything that one says is remembered now and put on Wikipedia. So, okay, I did say it. I said the point and click is dead. And what I really meant was the point and click is dead in the PlayStation era. But the PlayStation era is now over. Yeah. So point and click is very much back again.
What about a sequel to Broken Sword? Will we see that someday?
Of course.
Of course. Of course, everything.
Of course.
myself as a Beneath the Steel Sky fan, can I still hope on a sequel?
Absolutely, yes. We're not writing a sequel now, but we will do, because the great thing about Beneath the Steel Sky is it's got a very, very loyal fan base. And I was really thrilled by the reception on the iPhone. It got really fantastic reviews, and it sold well. I mean, it was fantastic. And the interesting thing is, you could get the ScumVM version, and you could play it. So you could play it for free, and that's fine. That's no problem. So you either play it for free, if you're not prepared to pay for it, and that's great for us as well, because it means that more people get to know about the brand, or you pay, I think it's €3 now, or you pay €3, and that supports our development, and obviously it's much better for us. What we need to do is we need to find ways of making games quicker to play, adventure games, because the idea of a character walking around a background feels very old-fashioned. But I feel very passionately that it's still all about, the text adventure was about go north, look at this, talk to this person, and that actually is what underpins adventures to this day. And obviously adventures go into many different areas, and you can look at Heavy Rain, which is a great game. But is it an adventure? As a genre, it's narrative driven. But you would say that the definition of a genre of an adventure, one of the definitions would be that it's all about cerebral gameplay rather than Twitch gameplay. And Heavy Rain is very interesting because it requires you to understand the grammar of the joypad, and you need to be able to react very quickly. And if you can't do that, then you can't play the game. So the primary challenge is a Twitch challenge rather than cerebral, and that's very interesting. And that's driving adventures in one direction. But certainly going forward, we will be very much building on our roots of particularly the first two Broken Swords, and driving forward and innovating, but innovating around that style of gameplay. The vast majority of my time is spent working on original games at Revolution, which is wonderful. But then I also get a window to other areas, so whether it be with Doctor Who, whether it be working on the Da Vinci Code, which was interesting. I mean, it wasn't a great game, not my fault, but it was very interesting to meet Ron Howard and his team. Doctor Who is very interesting to meet Stephen Moffat and his team and talk about games, and it's a terrific way of actually seeing what's going on and getting a very broad spectrum of what's happening in other entertainment mediums and how it can apply to games.
The Doctor in a new dimension. You take control in Shadows of the Vashta Nerada, the latest online adventure game.
You've got me. You can't wish for a better Christmas present.
In an adventure game, or in any game, you immediately start playing that character, and you need to know what your motivation is, because you're working. You're not just, it's not a passive, it's an active. You're working, so therefore you need to know what your objective is, and you need to know about your character. And the characters that you meet, you need to know about them very quickly. So it's very tempting to produce really archetypal characters. Remember, Allure of the Temptress, of course, was very much a parody of what was going on at the time. And hopefully when you talk to the characters, you'll find that they're talking about very modern ideas, but within a medieval context, which is part of the humour. And likewise, Beneath the Steel Sky was intended to be that as well. It was meant to feel very contemporary, but set in the modern. And the very best films do that, of course. The first Alien, which was such a special film, was really all about truckers, who happen to be exactly the same now. The first scene, they're talking about how much money they've got, more overtime and shift rates and things. The fact they've just woken up from being asleep, cryogenically asleep whatever it is, for however many years, is irrelevant to them. What they want to know is when they're going to get their bonuses. And I think that's what you need to do. You've got to bring it back. Because humanity doesn't really change. And I think that's the key thing. Humanity doesn't change. People are still, when they wake up, they're going to be more worried about what their pay is at the end of the month than how amazing it is that they've gone to sleep. Because, to them, going to sleep for a year while they travel is just common garden. It's irrelevant. So, we need to focus on the human story.